Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to today's conversation on Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sarah Jane, and I am delighted to be joined by my co-hosts, Diana Leader. Hi, Diana.
Hi, everybody.
Scott Holmes. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Sarah.
And our guest, Jennifer Regular. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
It's truly my pleasure. It's such an honor to be here with you all.
Thank you. The topic of our conversation today is when healing becomes leadership, trust your inner wisdom. And I'm now going to hand over to Scott.
Why, thank you very much. Now, I asked Jennifer on the program because she was gracious enough to have me on her program. And we had a really lively, incredible chat. And I really enjoyed it, but also the way that she came across and her wisdom. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. A little bit about myself. I am little. I'm under 5 feet, believe it or not. And I'm coming to you from the west coast of Canada. I'm living in Victoria, British Columbia, but I've had quite a journey getting here, and I've lived in many different places and worked in 16 different roles before I decided to get into the healing arts and then transformational workshops. And so there's been a lot of change and transformation in my life, to be sure. And each time a little bit more discovery about who I was and what makes me tick and what I get motivated by. And I love new experiences. I love different cultures. I love connecting with people, but I love connecting with animals and nature even more, because as an empath, I tend to pick up a lot of energy and dynamics that go on in the world and with others. And so that's the way that I like to replenish myself. And so, yeah, my healing journey has really been a journey of self-discovery about who I was and who I am, who I'm becoming.
Beautiful. We kind of connected because we travel and we often see the other side of life in parts of the world. And being an empath, I'm sure that you've been able to take a lot of that in and a lot of those energies in.
Yes. And it's really built on what I've learned and what I've experienced, but really it's helped activate remembrance about our true nature, about humanity, about where we feel home is, where we feel rooted. And it's supported really the way that I look at purpose and passion and having that through connection, and it's really lit my path. And when I established Lighting the Path, which is my business practice, then it was really about transitions and transformations and those activations and what helps us to really stay true and unite and connect within so that we can better be able to do that on the outside, co-creating global harmony, essentially, is what my lofty dream goal and vision for humanity is. So yeah, I do take it all in. I do embrace life fully and all my experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I've had all of the above.
Now, in the title, When Healing Becomes Leadership, I find it interesting only because the same thing happened to me in that as I healed, I wanted to share. And as I wanted to share, all of a sudden, the leadership came in that I brought people together. And it is constantly evolving, constantly growing, constantly expanding. These two beautiful ladies that are with me now, because of my journey, I was able to meet them and become very good friends with them and do a lot of work with them. And so how did healing for you turn into leadership?
Well, it's interesting because when you really think about what healing essentially is, it's not trying to improve or fix or develop anything necessarily. That can be a part of it, but it's really shedding anything that's not you. And returning to that place of wholeness. And I find that when we go on our healing journey and we do that, we shed all the old roles that we've outgrown, and really tune into our soul and what those needs are and be able to reach or be on the journey of self-actualization and not just be in that survival mode. Maslow talked about this years ago with the hierarchy of needs. Kind of get stuck that, self-care can be seen as self-perpetuating when we're thinking that something's wrong with us, or that we're deficient, or we don't have enough skills or enough credibility, or something's not enough, and we're in that survival mode, rotating through that. And we'll make it up to the love needs, but then we get betrayed by that. So many of us, as I did, which is really what kickstarted my journey, the shattered dream of the home, the husband, the pets, and claiming bankruptcy and losing all of that. And only to really discover who I truly was outside of all of that, outside of all the roles. And I think it's that kind of healing, that return to wholeness, that shapes our leadership. Because then we're truly ourselves and we come into alignment, but not just that, we're actually coherent, we're congruent. So we're not one person with this set of people, or this place when we're at work, and this person when we're at home. We're the same person in every single one of those situations, because we are not fragmented and pulled in all those different directions. And so true leadership is that radiant energy that we exude when we embody ourselves and life and who we are connecting with, and the purpose and the passion that we're meant to serve. It was really interesting, the revelation I had about passion, actually, when I kind of was jolted out of my well of self-pity, this hole of self-pity of losing everything. And when you break up the word passion, it's pass I on. And that I is your soul's expression of what you're here to pass on in this lifetime. And I got to hear a lot about that, having exposure to, over 17 deaths by the time I was even 21, and I'm 52 now. So there's been, an exponential amount of loss and death, but I got to hear what people would talk about at the funerals and the wakes, and what they remembered about that person, what that person passed on and carried on. And it's not always the same for every person. Every relationship is different, and every influence and impact is different in that way. But I find that it really starts with self-leadership, Scott, to answer your question, that healing journey of returning to ourselves and then leading from that place. And then, of course, others will follow and be inspired by that and motivated by the journey.
Beautiful. Diana.
So I have a question for you, Jennifer, if I can. I'm curious about how, so we're talking about bringing people to a place where they are being authentic to themselves and aligned. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? How do you bring that in?
Right conditions. Right. Create the right conditions. When we're trying to grow plants, for example, I'm looking out to my garden here, and it starts with that seed. That seed is you. It's not going to be anything else. The seed for the rose, or I don't even know. I don't think it might be a bulb, but you have a seed for a plant or a fruit or a vegetable. It's going to be that seed, that fruit or that vegetable. It's not going. You can't turn a carrot into a zucchini. We won't get into genetic modification, but we can't naturally turn a carrot into a zucchini. It's going to be a carrot. The zucchini is going to be it. And it doesn't have to compete with each other. It's its own unique blueprint and way of being. But we need to create the right conditions for that to grow, for it to flourish. And a lot of it can be done on its own, but a lot of it needs other resources, other elements that come into play. And so creating the right conditions, the right environment for our own growth and development is really important. That's why there's so much emphasis on creating sacred space in my work, for example, because we need a space where we can be ourselves and grow into ourselves and feel like we can be truthful and share with others. I remember having just a one-on-one connection with Sara Jane recently. And she shared some things that she said, I can't talk to everyone else, everyone about this. There's just certain people that you can, because they create the right conditions to do that. The conditions might be the traits and the qualities they bring into the relationship. It could be the environment and creating those sacred spaces. That's why we have retreats and places for refuge, because people can go there because there's the right conditions for us to really embody and be present with what is surfacing in our lives. And so I think creating the right conditions, Diana, is really important, and having the space to do that. But we can also learn to create that for ourselves as well. We don't necessarily have to go and find where those right conditions are.
I'm curious about that. I was curious about that because it's something that I question kind of on an ongoing basis, and not in a negative way, but I just question it for myself in order to stay in that place of alignment and to recognize that leadership is different for each of us because we are different, as you said earlier. So I love it. I think it's great. Your work is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sara.
You talked about leadership, and I was thinking, yeah, but am I a leader? And as you were talking about it, I was thinking, well, yes, you are. Because, and I remember I used to organize mind, body, spirit fairs. And I remember standing in one of them one day and thinking, how many lives can I touch? But if I help others to touch people's lives, how many more can we touch? Now, I was doing those before the internet is the way it is today. But then, of course, that goes now for today's conversation and for the Gift of Healing TV. Everything that I do with that and all the other interviews all of us go on, we're all leaders in our own unique way. And Scott calls me a collector of people. But are we collectors of people or just connectors of people? Because those connections, so for me, I see it as a net of connection of people around the world. Mm-hmm. And those connections are the energy, the power to make the changes within ourselves. A conversation we were having a little bit earlier on another program. And every action and reaction, everything we say, everything we do puts energy out there. And the greater our own healing journey, the more empowering that energy is we put out there. Mm-hmm. And I think I prefer that to positive. Let's make it empowering. And if that energy is going to come back to us, it's going to come back to us in that form. And so, and absolutely, my healing journey has been, it has been from that negative place of self to being able to get to do what I do without worrying about what other people think about me. And that's the important thing, isn't it? It is about, I am being true to me, and I'd love for each and every one of you to be true to yourself, whatever that might look like. And so our healing journey supports us to touch the lives we're here to touch, to support those people along their healing journey so that they can continue to do the same. My journey is my gift, if you like. Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it. Those things that have supported me that I now share is the gift that I bring. And so I'd love to hear from both Scott and Diana what their thoughts are on this, because I love the way you shared it, and it helped me to realize, okay, I don't think of myself as a leader, but maybe I am.
I can testify, yes, you are. Now, for those of you who don't know, Sara Jane started a book and invited 30.
No, there were 27 of us all together.
27. Okay, I thought there were 30. And it was an amazing amalgamation of people and modalities and perspectives on. I always get it wrong.
I I didn't become selfish. I became harder to manipulate.
And as a former people pleaser, I absolutely understood that. I was the ultimate people pleaser. I talked about putting my cape back in the closet because I would put it on and fly off to the rescue. And yes, I tease Sarah because she does collect people, but it's the active connection that she has, and I think you find it when you talk to her before the program. There is an instant connection with Sara. She makes it so easy to be yourself. She accepts people for who they are in that moment and allows them to shine. And that is leadership in its truest form, and that is elevating the people around you. I always think of leadership. I had this discussion on a train from I was taking the train from New York to Boston, and I was speaking with a gentleman, and we were talking about leadership, and he said, leadership has lost its luster. It used to be, as in the military, if you had a sergeant and he was in charge of 20 troops, he would go and make sure every single one of his troops had what they needed before he ever put his head on the bed. He made sure that everybody was taken care of beforehand. And that's not what leadership looks like anymore. Leadership looks like, all right, I've got mine, you get yours somewhere else. But it's that type of leadership of being able to elevate the people around you, of being able to allow them the space. And much like you said, Jennifer, hey, to develop that space, give them what they need. Give them the nutrients, give them the soil, give them the water, give them the sunshine to be able to grow whatever it is they need in order to do that. And that is a talent. That is an ability that we all have if we choose to accept that. And it's also such a beautiful art form when it's done right. Diana?
I have to follow that one, Scott. That was great. So, and I think leadership, it really has a nasty rap sometimes, that term, because yes, it does reflect some of the more traditional or even conservative ways of looking at being a leader and what that actually means. And it really sounds to me like, Jennifer, you have redefined all of it, which is awesome and very, very, very useful, I think, just for individuals, but also for the human race, right? So I also think that when we think about leadership, a lot of us will automatically go to that default place. We think about maybe how we were schooled or how we were treated as children, by our parents or whomever. And I think we intrinsically know that that's not accurate. Once we've done some of our own healing, to understand ourselves better, then we know that that's not accurate and it's not accurate for us. And then comes that opportunity for us to blossom into whoever we are. It doesn't have to be one thing, as we've said already, it doesn't have to be one thing. We don't have to be someone who has a huge legacy business. We don't have to be someone who is doing whatever it is that we are not comfortable with. So that's the piece that I am intrigued by, because it's healing work, but it's also work that it helps us define who we are. It really does, and that is phenomenal. Once we get a grasp on that, then we can decide what our actual leadership style is. I mean, mine at this point is just having fun and, having fun with people. So, and I fully believe that makes a difference. Like if you're happy with people, then they have the opportunity to be happy too. If you are kind with people, they have the opportunity to be kind as well. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a little thing. It can be whatever it is you want it to be, as you said earlier. So, yeah, it's
Thank you.
it's even just taking the time to look at that and understand, okay, this isn't just when I hear leadership. It's not, I don't have to go and be a boss. I get to be this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I wanted to just pick up something else. You started off by saying that you had a lot of loss when you were younger, and you got to hear what people said about those that had passed, that had transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody out there who's ever done this exercise of writing your own obituary and what you want to people to know about you or to remember about you, that changes or it can change how you deal with people on a daily basis. It really can. I always wondered about my legacy and what it would be. And I used to come up with a blank, and now it's coming much better and clearer in a full picture. So how do you trust your wisdom, Jennifer? And
Well, that's just
how do you know it's yours?
How do you know it's yours? Oh, that's a good question too. But when you mentioned about the eulogy, Scott, it made me think that's when you start trusting your inner wisdom, because then you're actually defining it, putting it on paper, what your legacy is. But a lot of people think that beyond their death, but we are a living legacy. This is also leadership. This is being a role model. If you're inspiring people, if you're impacting people, if you made a difference in someone's life, you are a leader. And I think what really, truly redefines leadership is when we move out of those role-to-role ways of relating to each other and connect more soul to soul. And that's where, like Sarah Jane said, she doesn't care about what people think anymore, because we're not into that role to role where there's roles and expectations and obligations, and we're operating out of fear, obligation, and guilt, which is as an acronym for FOG, right? Creating that heavy density. And we're living out of passion. We're leading from that place, that we're here to pass on. So it'd be interesting to do that exercise, as you mentioned, Scott, and see what comes up there and what is available there. But also to recognize that it's not just about what you leave behind, it's how you live and how present you are to life and the people around you and the connections you have every moment of every day. That's what's making a difference, because every day we go to sleep is almost like a death, and then we reawaken in the morning, and then we get to start fresh, start a new day. Our dreams get shattered, and then we have the courage and the healing process that needs to happen to start dreaming a new dream, and we create a new vision. And Scott, you mentioned that's becoming more clear, and we refine that. And we talked about, evolving our soul and our life and the way that we live out in the world. And so when you touched too about the healing journey and how, or if it's a healer's a leader, right? That's creating a movement. So I find leadership also about creating movement within ourselves, creating movement in the world. And that takes leadership as well. And so I think I got lost in your question there, Scott, because sometimes things just come through and then I feel like it needs to be shared. But that's trusting. Where we start trusting our inner wisdom, right? It's not trying to perform or meet obligations or expectations or, say the right thing. What we're doing is allowing whatever's surfacing to come through, and not to judge it or try to alter it or try to make it perfect in some way. It's just allowing that whatever needs to surface to come through, and trust that it's wisdom that is going to support where we're at in our journey and whoever we're meant to share that with. And you asked, what's your own wisdom? I think, Scott, too, is there's different intuitive channels that we have, but our own inner wisdom, our own intuition is always going to be something positive. It might challenge us, but it will never put us down. It'll never use a have to or should or a must or any of those kind of words. That's all pressure, performance, and outside of our role. when we outside of our soul, really, and that's how we become disconnected, is that we kind of lose ourselves in whatever role that might be. So our inner wisdom is really something that comes from truth, from emotional and energetic integrity and empowerment.
Beautiful. Miss Sara.
I was working with a client one day, and suddenly the words were in my head. I am the love of my life. And I knew that not only were those words for the client I was working with, they were for me and for everybody else in this world. So yes, that's intuition, gut instinct, that's inner wisdom. How much of those type of things do we think, where did that come from? It came from our soul, because our soul is connected to all that is. And I see our heart as being our connection to our soul. And when, as you said, it can't be, it's not going to be a negative. It's not going to be a telling off or you didn't do this right, or it's not going to be anything like that. And those words, and it hit me. It's exactly what I should be, is the love of my own life. And that's what each and every one of us should be. Because when we bring that to ourselves, we can bring that out to everybody else. And it's about not having expectations of anything. It's not about judging. It's just about allowing. I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. And I didn't try and think where it would go, because I love the fact that without expectation, you can allow things to happen in the way they are meant to. And that's trusting your inner wisdom. But that's also trusting that the universe knows better than we do. and the universe, sort of will guide us. And it may feel at times as if we're being guided off track. But I think about my life and the years spent in that people pleaser and the jobs and things I did in that time. None of that was a waste. None of it. Because we learn things from everything that we do, even if it's how not to be, what not to do. There's always a learning that we can potentially use when we do start our healing journey, when we do start to find ourselves and what really speaks to us. I worked in retail for quite a few years, and I'm doing a wellbeing fair at the weekend. I know what to do because that's what I did for so many years. And trying to guide people who've got stands. And so, because I remember at one of the fairs, one of the ladies put her couch out. She sat behind it reading a book and wondered why nothing was happening for her. And so I went and talked to her as nicely as I could. And so she brought her chair around to the front of the couch and put her nose back in the book. Some people you can guide, others you can't. But that's because I worked in retail for so long. Don't put barriers between you. Be open. And yeah, but it's just trusting what we have learned, maybe from things that we thought, well, that doesn't bear any relevance to today and what I'm doing. But it's amazing that there are those things within what we've done in the past that are very much going to be a part of our today.
Thank you. Diana.
So I know Scott and Sarah, you both heard this, but I want to talk about the human sauce element of us being here as souls on earth, because that's often a place where we get lost. And I mean, we can see it every day, and we've probably experienced. Well, I know, Sarah, you've talked about it. Scott, you've talked about it, and Jennifer, you did too. There's always that expectation that we follow, or that direction that we follow, or we don't feel like we're enough if we want to do something different. So I really see this as being, here's the sauce, here is us. To really separate it, so that the choices that we then can make are ones that are true to us, as opposed to being the should, or the, you'd better do this, or this is how you have to do it to be accepted or loved. I look around me and I see so many people that are still there, and so limited then in terms of what they do and what they allow into their lives, and what they think of themselves. So I think it's a really big one, and I know I always come back to that, you guys, in conversation, because it feels really big to me. It has been really big for me in my life, to just recognize, hey, I don't have to do what you want me to do, or I don't have to do it like that. And I know, when I think about the energy of some of the stuff that has been created on this planet, some of the structures, I just get very, very uncomfortable and very tight. And, my body tells me very clearly, that's not for you, so having the opportunity to understand ourselves and understand that it's okay to have been or still be wherever you are, but know that there is more, and, that more is available to you whenever you choose to allow it in. And, and blessings to everybody who's doing that right now.
So the inner wisdom was the one that I could never hear. I had been conditioned to make sure that everybody and everything around me was safe, was secure. I put my armor on, very thick armor. I went out into the world and I made sure it was safe for everybody around me, my family, my daughters, my wife, everybody that I loved. I made sure. And I lost me. It wasn't until my wife passed that I started to find out who I was and be able to hear that voice. And now I call out to it all the time, finding ways. Our friend Mesha, Diana and I, our friend Mesha, she gives me ways to be able to go to bed and keep the pathway open to be able to invite in all of those inner voices, all of those guides, all of that, to be able to make sure that I can hear them. And that for me has been the biggest part. Why I've done a lot of things I've done is because they said, "Yep, go do it. Okay, it's all good. You can. It's all safe. You can do it. You're not going to fail. And if you do, it'll be a lesson you need to learn." Okay, thank you very much. So, how has leadership, or how have you grown into leadership, and what have you done in that capacity that you feel really good about?
Is that directed at me?
Yes, I apologize, Jennifer. Yes.
All right. Yeah. I think everyone's talked about it here, is getting to know ourselves really, really well and learn to trust ourselves again. Because maybe we've made choices that, weren't the best, or didn't have the outcome that we had expected, or met others' expectations as we thought we would. And it could take a little time to get to know ourselves and to trust ourselves in our decisions again, and to be able to support that. And for leadership, can you repeat your question again, Scott?
How has leadership come out in you? What do you do to lead? What do you do to lead in your community, in your sessions, with your clients, with the work that you do?
Yeah, it's in learning to embrace my power through the self-discovery, not giving my power away, not thinking anyone else has power over me and my life, and learning different expressions of who I am and how I'm here to serve. And so that has translated into how I connect with loved ones, how I connect with friends, how I connect with strangers, how I connect out in the community and other cultures when I'm visiting other countries. It does come about being united within so that we can unite on the outside as well. And leadership, for me, how that translates is really about stewardship and tending to who we are and what we came here to do, and how we're serving in that in the best possible way. And that means taking care of our soul's needs. That does mean taking care of family and friends. And, and Sarah Jane talked about healing and how we pass that on and share that with others. When we heal ourselves, we heal our whole generational line. And so then we become a leader through that, because now we've healed, all the generations before and future generations as well. So leadership's about stewardship for me. It's about stewarding what we came here to do and becoming who we came here to be.
And how do you know what your mission, your task, your soul contract is? How has that come through?
I think it's revealed as you do the work, you do the inner work, and you trust your inner wisdom, and you get to know yourself really well, that it surfaces because it's inner blueprint. It's like what's meant to be, and so creating the conditions for that is creating the space to do the inner work, and for allowing that to emerge, for doing the healing work, for doing journaling, whatever kind of practices that you might have that support your growth and development. Not fixing again, but just supporting what's already present and being able to see what that is, and learning about those different expressions of who you are and who you know yourself to be. And so I think that's what really it's about, is getting to know yourself really well and really standing in your power and knowing that you are lighting the way. We talked about soul a lot, and I think a beautiful acronym of soul, it helps us to all remember just sending out universal love. Sending out universal love. So when you're in integrity with who you are, with you're in integrity with your work, then you start to understand your mission when you start seeing how people respond to that. You start hearing things from other people about qualities that you might have taken for granted, because it's kind of so natural that we often overlook it. We often take it for granted. So we often hear from other people, what our mission might be. For me, it just surfaced that I'm here in all of those roles. I mentioned how I had 16 different roles, through social services and retail and other positions, and as a healing practitioner, and then as a speaker and writer and so on. That it's all of that, the underlying signature is guiding the destiny of souls into their most empowered way of being. And so there is a common thread often when we look back of all the different things that we've done, all the forms of expression we've had, personally, professionally, business-wise, and so on, that there is a mission that we've been on all along. It reminds me of Dorothy, in The Wizard of Oz, when she had those ruby slippers. She had the power all along. She just didn't know it until she knew it. And I think that's how our mission and purpose comes to us. We have multiple purposes, by the way, but our true mission, I think, is just what becomes known to us along the way.
Beautiful. Sarah?
It's about trusting ourselves, isn't it? It's all about trusting ourselves. Our intuition, our gut instinct, the inspiration. I'm not somebody that hears voices. I'm not somebody that sees things. I just get a sense of knowing. Yes, I know I said those words were in my head. happens very, very rarely, but it's trusting it. And I remember standing in my bedroom at our previous house. I just resigned from my job. I was going self-employed. And the words were in my head, time to move on. And it was just like, I've just left my job. What are you talking about? And I just, am I moving? Is that what you want? What is it? And I just said, you bring it, I'll do it. And they brought this house to me. And been here nearly 21 years. But it happened smoothly for me, but the others had complications with it. You know, sort of just like, no, it's going to happen, so I'm not worried about it. It's trusting the process. And there are going to be things that go smoothly. People talk about coincidence, and I think most of us would now refer to that as synchronicity. I took the courage in my hands to leave my marriage. That was the beginning of my journey, my healing journey. I finished my marriage. I started the giving up on people pleasing. Then the universe decided my job was also going, which was fine by me. But in the process, the company I was working for was being taken over by a company that was right here in Bournemouth, and I was living in Northampton at the time. I got a 6-month secondment. I then was able to take redundancy and walk straight into a brand new job. That was the synchronicity of I took the action that was required to leave my marriage, to start letting go of the people pleasing. And the universe brought in the rest, including finding the little house I then bought down here. And then it gave me this one. No, it hasn't given me this one. We got a whacking great mortgage, but it gave us this house. And it's trusting the process of life. And it's not always easy to do that. But that was before I even really started understanding everything that I understand now. But I wasn't in a place of panic and worry. I just got on with it. And I feel very blessed that I was able to stay, in spite of all the people pleasing and the insecurities, I was able to stay calm within that. And I think the calmer we can stay within the things that are going on in our lives, it's not going to change what happens, but it can change aspects of the outcome. We can make it easy for ourselves, or we can make it difficult for ourselves. And most of the time, I'm quite happy with making it as easy as possible for myself. There are times I have yes, I do. I'm having a human experience. I have the humanness about me. I genuinely do. And that's right. I accept that. And I honor that within the fact that it's this experience. But that can help us to support others. And if us sharing aspects of our story, of what happened for us, can support others, if you really feel that your life could do with a change, have the courage to step outside your comfort zone. And for me, stepping outside your comfort zone is to step back into yourself. Because as the saying goes, nothing grows in your comfort zone.
Diana, as a leader in 4 volumes as a lead author with over 80 authors, you stepped into leadership, into find your voice, save your life. And And talk a little bit about that, if you would, about how that came about, but also how you stepped into that type of leadership and guidance for other people.
Well, in the beginning of all this, of my awakening, all that, I was really limited by my own voice. I had to learn how to express myself, to ask and demand what I wanted. And it was tough. It was tough for me. I was the youngest of 5. So I was, commonly told what to do and, come along, this is what we're doing and this is what we're eating. And, it's not that I had a bad upbringing, but I fell into that role of just being the person who accepted what other people expected of me. And I would be that. And then that continued, but there was always that kind of turning for me when I had any kind of awareness at all. That turning started like, this isn't feeling so good, but I don't really know what it is yet. Like way back, I don't really know what it is yet. So I hear it, but I'm gonna probably not do anything about it. And I wish that I had listened harder and not done that, but that's kind of how we grow, right? So I think part of what the issue was for me is that, when we are voiceless, and I've learned this from my clients over decades, and I've been doing this work for well over 30 years now. So in learning about what the issue is with voice, which and the major one is that we don't feel as though we can decide for ourselves. We don't feel as though we are as valuable as someone else. And it's not even that specific, in our heads. It's not like, oh, I feel really crappy about myself. It's more about I can't accept that good part of me. Someone else always knows better. Someone else is going to direct me. So my history in terms of understanding that and doing work around it really started years ago when I did a 10-year stint in a women's shelter, and so I could see those things clearer and clearer, and I knew when those books getting to the book, Scott, when the opportunity came to do the first book, I was really even hesitant to insist that everybody have a spiritual practice or understand the impact of spirit on in our lives, because I just wanted women to be able to speak their own truth. That was it. Like, come on in here. I had a very difficult time even charging anybody for any of that work. Just come on in. This is a really safe space for you to be able to say exactly what it is you want to say and you need to say. Because we all know that when we start to express our stories, then the healing is activated, and you're moving towards something different and a greater self-acceptance of who we are. So yeah, when book 1 came, it was, again, book 2, it was like, I don't know that I can, I can't do this in the traditional way that, was being expected of me to do, get your healers and, all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted women to be themselves, have the opportunity to be themselves. So as it turned out, that did happen. The 3rd book was for healers, and they all talked about finding their healer's voice, which was just amazing. In fact, I still continue to get messages from people about that rocked me. That was, fantastic, and which is great. And then of course, Scott, you and the men's book came along after that. So it grew from there, and as it grew and my community grew, I learned more and more. Like Scott, I learned from you. Sarah, I've learned from you. You mentioned Misha, of course. I've learned so much from her. I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure. I suppose the universe would have brought me something else to, kick my butt a little bit and get me moving. But I really don't know what it would have been like now, like what life would be like now if I hadn't had that community. So maybe the community was the kick, was the message. Get moving, change it, do something about it. So they were phenomenal books, and I am forever grateful for being part of them.
Beautiful. Jennifer, how have you developed your community?
How have I developed my community? I think again, I love words, right? How we can play on them and the deeper meaning of them. And, community is coming together in unity. So I think when we're walking and talking in energetic integrity, then we naturally attract those who are wanting that too, or on that same sort of journey. And so it's really an attraction manifestation kind of process of how the community comes together. And then once we do come together, then it becomes a very sacred act of supporting each other in being fully present with each other and staying connected because of that.
And how can people get a hold of you? And I know they're going to be in the show notes.
Yeah,
but how can they get a hold of you?
I have a reach out tab on my website, which is lightingthepath.ca. And so people can directly contact me there. It doesn't go to an assistant. It goes directly to me. And because I love connecting with people one-to-one. And also through LinkedIn, that's where I hang out the most if you're on any kind of social media platform. And you can explore my website. It's going to be under some development because redefining what lighting the path is going to look like, which is typically guiding people from the career into their calling. But certainly there's some things, there's an inspired living blog on there that may spark some interest and spark some aha moments for you. There's people that have often talked about how they relate to my story that's on there or to something that they've read in the blog. So all that is available on lightingthepath.ca.
Is there any last words that you would like, or anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to express?
What I'd like to express is leaving people with my motto, which is to free your spirit to direct the life that you're meant to live.
Free your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Sara, there is a quick story, and I'd love you to tell about freeing your spirit and wolves.
One of the very first things I did when I was just like, stop worrying about what other people think about you. And I became a member of the UK Wolf Conservation Trust. And not only did I actually then sign up for a trip to Romania, in which we worked with the Carpathian Large Carnivore Project to track wolves and lynx in the Carpathian Mountains for 2 weeks, not to kill, never to kill. But I also became a trainee handler with the wolves at the trust. And so I got to walk the wolves. And they are the most amazing creatures. They really are. And I also took a couple of people, there were 5 of us all together with learning difficulties, out to the States. And we spent 3 weeks out there, and we got to spend a week with the Nez Perce, learning about their culture, their history, from their perspective rather than white man's perspective. And boy, that was an eye-opener for me. That really was. And we got to go to Yellowstone Park, where we had the most amazing experiences, not just seeing wolves and coyote and buffalo and bison or whatever they are, and sort of the deer, but we also saw the guide we had. He said, what would you like to see? And amongst them, I said, I'd love to see a mountain lion. And he said, do you play golf? I said, no. He said, your chances of seeing one of those is as much as you getting a hole in one. Guess what we saw? Amongst all the other things that we saw. And trust life. Trust life. Do what feels right. Doesn't matter how scary it is. If it feels right. Because you can learn so much. You can grow so much. And I am going to say this right now, and I've said it so many times before. You cannot make a mistake. You take that mistake, you lie it down as a stepping stone, and it helps you to move forward. Because every action you take, you learn more. And so I am going to say a massive thank you. If Diana and Scott, you've got a quick final share, and then I will close it. And I have put your website address into the chat, Jennifer, and I will put it under the video on YouTube as well.
Thank you.
So, Diana, any final words?
Just bless you, Jennifer. So happy to have heard everything that you had to say today, and send you love.
Thank you. I received that.
Scott.
It's been great pleasure to be able to see it. If anyone can tell, Jennifer has incredible energy. She has this almost fairy-like energy that just shines. And for anybody who is looking to connect, she is well worth the time to investigate through her website, through her podcasts, and everything else that she does.
I appreciate you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you to both Diana and Scott, and a special thank you to our guest, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing with us. Folks, if anything here has really touched you, if you would like to learn more about everybody here, I'll put everybody's websites underneath the video on YouTube. So if you're watching there, and they're all up on the website, A Gift of Healing TV, under today's conversation as well. Please think about checking out what we all do. As Jennifer obviously is our guest. The rest of us are on there all the time. But Jennifer is our guest. And if you feel drawn to connect, use those contact pages. That's what we're here for. We do these programs because we choose to share our experiences to support you. That's what each and every one of us has done here in this program. And I am so grateful to each and every one of my co-hosts and our guest, because I couldn't do this without all of you. It's a team effort. And we do this because we care. We've gone through it. We're here to support people through it. And hopefully you'll get through it a little bit easier than we did. So, and next week, I am being joined by Suzanne York, and she's going to be sharing sacred waters, sacred scents, and soul alignment, which is going to include a meditation. So I hope you will think about joining us for that. And actually, Suzanne's the one who's organising the wellbeing fair that I'm doing on Sunday. So she's a lady I've actually met. I love meeting people via the internet, but I love meeting people in person too. So take care.